On February the 24th of 2023, law enforcement in Fairfax County, Virginia, was called to the Hattontown home of 37-year-old Christine Banfield. Officers found the woman suffering from critical stab wounds to the neck and a man identified as 39-year-old Joseph Ryan, who died after being shot in the head and upper torso. Christine subsequently succumbed to her injuries in a local hospital. During and after the incident, 2 911 calls had been placed from inside the home. One was a hang-up call from the shooting victim, and the second was from the Banfield's au pair, Brazilian national Juliana Perez Magalhães. The latter reported that a friend of hers was hurt before a man, later identified as Christine's husband, Brendan, picked up the phone to say that he'd shot a stranger who'd entered his home. Yet, in October of 2023, several months after the initial incident, Juliana was arrested for Joseph's second-degree murder. At the time, no one had been arrested for Christine's killing. 2 versions of events emerged during Juliana's bond hearing in late October of 2023. The au pair claimed that she was about to take the Banfield's child to the zoo when she saw Joseph pull up to the home. She consequently called Brendan, who told her to wait for him as he'd returned to the address. Brendan and Juliana then went into the house and took the 4-year-old into the basement. They heard some form of interaction in the room above them between Joseph and Christine. It would emerge that the latter two had connected on a fetish website. Unsure if the interaction was consensual, Brendan and Juliana went into the bedroom. The former, a special agent for the IRS, entered the room with his service weapon drawn and found Joseph with a knife to Christine's throat. Upon being told to drop the blade, Joseph allegedly started stabbing Christine in the neck. Brendan shot him in the head, inflicting an injury that blinded the man but didn't kill him. Brendan then reportedly told Juliana to get his home gun from a bathroom safe. Upon returning, she saw Joseph move as if he was about to get up, so she shot him in the chest, hitting his heart and killing him. Prosecutors argued against the storyline presented by Juliana's lawyer. They contended that Brendan and Juliana were having an exclusive affair and that the entire incident had been planned around them ending up together. They proposed that someone other than Christine had set up the account on the fetish website and that Joseph responded to it, unwittingly becoming part of the au pair's and the husband's plot. Juliana's lawyers agreed that she and Brendan were involved in an intimate relationship, but noted that it wasn't exclusive, emphasizing that the latter and Christine each had affairs of their own. The case was ongoing as of the latest updates. Number 8. Emily Clean Barry. Care worker Emily Clean Barry was employed by the family of 81-year-old Margaret Birch to look after her at the woman's home in Hinckley, Leicestershire, England. At some point in 2013, Birch noticed that her government-issued pension wasn't lasting as long as it normally did and couldn't account for the money. The family began to suspect that Clean Barry was stealing from her. They placed a high-tech camera inside a teddy bear and set up a sting operation they dubbed Operation Narnia. The name was inspired by C.S. Lewis's The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, as the device was angled at a wardrobe containing the pensioner's purse. The family's suspicions were confirmed as the camera captured Clean Barry stealing about £40 from the bag. Birch's relatives didn't know that when they hired Clean Barry, she was already on bail for stealing from one of her friends. The incident had a severe emotional impact on Birch, who blamed herself for the theft, and on her 86-year-old husband, Owen, who reportedly felt that he'd failed to protect her. In the aftermath, Clean Barry was jailed for 13 months. During her sentencing, the judge at Leicester Crown Court told Clean Barry, "You deserve to be labeled a parasite because that's what you were." Number 7. Masha Didok. Following the massive success of Netflix true crime series Tiger King, Masha Didok experienced moderate fame as the hot nanny hired by zoo runner Jeff Lowe and his wife Lauren, who are prominently featured in the series. During Tiger King's first season, the couple discussed bringing in a nanny to help care for their baby daughter, and Jeff expressed a desire that they find an attractive woman to fill that position. He announced that they'd hired Didok, a part-time model, in an Instagram post from March of 2020, which he captioned #HotNanny. The couple had reportedly met Didok during a trip to Las Vegas, and she began commuting to Oklahoma for her nanny job in the aftermath. In July of 2021, 29-year-old Didok made headlines after she was caught on surveillance footage stealing a brass candle holder worth an estimated $5,000 from the Wynn Hotel in Las Vegas. Didok pilfered the item from a private dining room and then left the hotel wearing it on her forearm as an accessory. The hotel security team was able to track down the license plate of Didok's car and the ticket she'd used for valet services. The woman was subsequently arrested by Las Vegas police on charges of grand larceny. Number 6. Marissa Maui. Leading up to 2017, Florida babysitter Marissa Maui was employed by Nadine Campbell to care for her son. Maui had initially come highly recommended, as she'd previously worked for one of Campbell's relatives. Campbell was reportedly delighted with Maui's work and saw of her as a daughter. The babysitter, who was at the time in her early 20s, became pregnant while working for Campbell and gave birth to a son in October of 2014. Campbell initially believed that the child had been fathered by a boyfriend of Maui's. However, Campbell's son, whose identity wasn't revealed, eventually told his mother in 2017 that he and the babysitter had been having relations for nearly 4 years. Since January of 2014, a DNA test proved that Maui's child was actually his. Upon being reported to the police, Maui tried claiming that the victim had actually forced himself on her. However, recorded conversations between her and the father of her baby proved that she was lying. Faced with the damning evidence, she attempted to justify her actions by claiming that the victim was mature beyond his years. She was arrested and faced life in prison, but ultimately admitted the abuse, which led to her being given a 20-year sentence in the fall of 2019. Maui was also stripped of any claim to her son and would have to register as an offender upon being released from prison. Campbell spoke to the media in the sentencing aftermath and revealed that her son was an amazing father, but had to face the challenges of raising a 5-year-old child while in his late teens. Campbell went on to say that he would take her grandson to school every morning before going to classes himself, and that they would play together in the backyard in the afternoon. The woman noted that the young father had little time left to spend with his friends or towards finding a girlfriend. Number 5. Stephen Procopio. On October the 15th of 2018, Stephen Procopio and accomplice Anthony Mook Cooper broke into the home of mother of 5 Nicole Humphrey in Newcastle, Pennsylvania. Procopio, who was 19 years old at the time, knew Humphrey as he had babysat her children. After entering the home, Cooper, who was also 19, allegedly gunned down Humphrey and her boyfriend, Lawrence Cannon, as they slept in the living room. He then handed the gun to Procopio after they'd heard noises made by the couple's children coming from upstairs. When Humphrey's daughter, Amariah Emery, came down the stairs, Procopio fatally shot her in the face. He also shot after her younger sister, but she managed to run back upstairs and escaped unharmed. She would later testify against Procopio at his trial. The two intruders fled the scene and were later arrested. In the winter of 2022, Procopio was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole after he was found guilty of second-degree murder in the deaths of Humphrey and Emery, and third-degree murder in Cannon's death. Procopio maintained during his trial and after his conviction that Cooper had shot all the victims, but Emery's sister was adamant that she'd seen him pull the trigger. The only evidence in tying Cooper to the killings was Procopio's statement to the police. Cooper was thus offered a plea deal for third-degree murder and was sentenced to 15 to 30 years in a state correctional facility. Number 4. Cassidy Ray Woodworth. For about 5 months in late 2018, Cassidy Ray Woodworth worked as a nanny for a family in Paradise Valley, Arizona. In January of the following year, the family discovered various items which had gone missing from their home being sold on Poshmark.com. They included both baby and adult clothes along with various accessories, shoes and toys. It would emerge that 21-year-old Woodworth had stolen the items worth a total of roughly $5,300 from her employers and was selling them on the website. She reportedly returned some of the goods to the family in the aftermath, but was nevertheless arrested on charges of theft and trafficking in stolen property. Number 3. Alexandra Donahue. On April the 3rd of 2012, Alexandra Donahue, aged 22, was taken into the custody of the Chicago police on suspicion of theft. Donahue had worked as a nanny for a family in the affluent Northbrook neighborhood. Suspicions had fallen upon Donahue after an estimated $600 had disappeared from the wallets of the children under her care. The nanny denied having taken the money when confronted by their father, but later admitted she'd been the thief upon being questioned by police. After she was arrested on theft charges, Donahue was released from custody on a $5,000 bond while awaiting a hearing set for early May. Today's topic was requested by A Solace 7632, J Peters 1222, Why is tomato a fruit? And A Zambri 1. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Sarah Hallcup. Leading up to the summer of 2012, Sarah Hallcup had worked as a nanny for the family of Lord Christopher Wellesley, the youngest son of the Duke of Wellington, for about 4 years. She was so entrusted by the family that Lady Emma Wellesley had become godmother to her 19-month-old son. Hallcup was given the keys to the Wellesleys' Top Hill house in Heckfield, Hampshire, while the couple and their 3 children went on holiday. In July of 2012, the property was, however, ransacked while the aristocratic family was away. Burglars were able to access the main house, as well as the small annex where 28-year-old Hallcup was staying. The value of the stolen items was estimated at close to $40,000, and the list included valuable art, a Cartier clock, and busts of Lord Wellesley's ancestor, the 1st Duke of Wellington, who defeated Napoleon at Waterloo in 1815. Investigators were suspicious that the theft had been an inside job. Evidence indicated that even though the bathroom windows were open at each property, the burglars hadn't forced their way inside. Moreover, Hallcup reportedly seemed to be unbothered by the burglary. A career burglar by the name of Neil Akhtar, aged 27, was arrested in the incident's wake after his fingerprints were found inside the home. On his phone and camera, the police discovered photos of the pilfered items and records of contact with antique dealers about selling the Wellesleys' valuables. Hallcup was arrested as well after admitting that she and Akhtar were in a relationship. The police discovered texts between them in which they discussed robbing the mansion. The nanny denied being involved in the theft, but she was ultimately convicted of conspiracy to burgle and jailed for 2 years in March of 2013. The judge stated in court that the incident and Hallcup's breach of trust had had a truly devastating effect on the Wellesleys. A number of the family's items were never recovered. Akhtar, who had prior burglary convictions, pleaded guilty and was given a 3-year sentence, while a 3rd accomplice, Scott Allaway, was jailed for 18 months for hauling off the stolen property in his van. We will line up our release on when manipulation goes wrong right after number 1. Stick around if you'd like to watch that as well still. If not, I'll see you tomorrow. Number 1. Eileen Schulz. Law enforcement in Fort Myers, Texas, was called to a residence on Kyson Lane in January of 2023 after homeowners reported that their dog, Lady, had been stolen. The family suspected that the culprit was 61-year-old Eileen Schulz, who'd been their long-time nanny. They believed that Schulz had taken the dog as revenge for being fired earlier in the day. Deputies subsequently located Schulz at a Fort Myers hotel. She denied stealing the dog but changed her story when hotel workers reported seeing her with the Lady. The disgruntled nanny claimed that she'd intended to take the pet back to her owners, but law enforcement learned that she'd instead dropped off the dog alone in the area of Penzance Boulevard and Kyson Lane. After searching for her through the night, the police eventually found Lady at a home in the Danforth Lakes community, where a resident had taken her in for the night. The pet was reunited with her owners while Schulz was arrested and faced charges of grand theft. Number 7. Jennifer Lynn Faith. On October the 9th of 2020, Jennifer Lynn Faith and her husband James left their Dallas home to walk their dog around the neighborhood. A sudden barrage of gunfire left 49-year-old James, an American Airlines executive, with 7 critical gunshot wounds to which he ultimately succumbed. In the immediate aftermath, Jennifer portrayed herself as a grieving widow, pleading for members of the general public with information about her husband's killer to come forward. In an interview with a local media outlet, the woman recounted the fateful incident, saying, "I heard running behind me and I turned around and all of a sudden somebody just started shooting at him," calling the situation devastating. Investigators got a break in the case the following January when they arrested 48-year-old Darren Ruben Lopez and charged him with the murder. Lopez, a Tennessee resident, was accused of driving all the way to the Faith's home in Dallas, where he laid in wait until the couple took their dog out for a walk. He gunned James down with a .45 caliber handgun, which was later found inside his Dixon County residence. It subsequently emerged that Jennifer and Lopez had dated in high school and college. The woman admitted to texting him daily to help him through a recent divorce, but denied any intimate involvement with her husband's killer. Upon seizing the pair's cell phones, however, detectives unearthed over 14,000 calls and texts they'd exchanged between September the 30th and October the 30th, many of which involved Jennifer coaching Lopez on what to say to law enforcement and how to hide evidence of the crime. In early 2021, the manipulative woman was charged with 1 count of destruction of an object with the intent to obstruct a federal investigation after factory resetting her phone in order to hide her damning communications with Lopez. In September, prosecutors added a charge of interstate commerce in the commission of murder for hire, accusing her of persuading Lopez to commit the murder by falsely convincing him that she was being abused and also providing him with financial compensation. Jennifer pleaded guilty in February of 2022 and in June was sentenced to life in prison. Lopez entered a plea of not guilty and as of the latest updates was awaiting trial at the Dallas County Jail. Number 6. BOS Revi. Australian woman Karen Ristevski went missing on June the 29th of 2016, having last been seen at her family's Avondale Heights residence. The 47-year-old's whereabouts weren't determined until 8 months later, when a group of horticulturists came upon her remains beneath a pile of tree branches in Maidstone Regional Park. The subsequent autopsy was inconclusive in determining the cause of Karen's death. The woman's loved ones laid her to rest during a funeral service in which her husband, BOS, served as a pallbearer. By all accounts, the man seemed an innocent, grieving widower. However, in December of 2017, following an extensive police investigation involving audio recording devices and thorough analysis of CCTV footage, the authorities filed criminal charges against BOS in connection to his wife's death. The man eventually confessed to the killing, but refrained from providing a description of how she died. Prosecutors were unable to prove murderous intent on BOS's part, and he thus agreed to a plea bargain on the lesser charge of manslaughter, which carries a maximum penalty of 20 years in prison. During a pre-sentencing hearing in the Supreme Court of Victoria, the couple's daughter, Sarah, refused to provide a victim impact statement, instead giving her father a glowing character reference. Criminal psychologist Laura Richards subsequently stated her belief that Sarah had been manipulated by her father into supporting him despite his guilty plea. BOS was sentenced to 9 years in prison, with his daughter's testimony likely serving as a mitigating factor for his seemingly lenient punishment. Number 5. Craig Rouer. In 2007, a man from the English Channel Island of Guernsey was given a life sentence for the murder of 21-year-old James Dean in St. Peter Port. Years later, while Craig Rouer was incarcerated at HM Prison Dartmoor, he faced further criminal charges after it emerged that he'd conspired with his girlfriend to smuggle the synthetic cannabinoid spice as well as mobile phones into prison. Rouer, then in his early 30s, allegedly manipulated mother of one, Katie Hayes, into doing his nefarious bidding by falsely promising her marriage. In court, Hayes was described as a scared and vulnerable young woman whom her imprisoned lover had taken full advantage of. She reportedly helped him sneak the contraband into prison by way of sheets of paper that had been soaked in the Class B drug. Both Rouer and Hayes pleaded guilty to what Plymouth Crown Court Judge Robert Linford called an extremely serious offense. In early 2022, Rouer had 2 years and 10 months added to his life sentence. while Hayes was given a suspended 12-month jail sentence and was also ordered to perform 180 hours of unpaid work. Number 4. Molina Roberge. A luxury cruise ship called the MSC Princess was raided by Australian Border Force officials with sniffer dogs shortly after docking in Sydney on August 28th of 2016. Officers reportedly found 35 kilograms of cocaine in the cabin, being shared by Canadian influencers Molina Roberge, a former escort, and Isabelle Lagasse, an ex-adult film star. An additional 60 kilograms of the illicit substance was discovered in the cabin belonging to 65-year-old Andre Tamine. The 95 total kilograms, valued at upwards of $16 million, was reported as the record for cocaine smuggled in luggage through an Australian air or seaport. The 3 Quebec natives were arrested and charged for their alleged roles in the drug smuggling operation. In court, 24-year-old Roberge claimed to have initially refused to take part in the 7-week cruise, but was manipulated into doing it by her unnamed sugar daddy. She indicated that she and Lagasse were simply tasked with making the smuggling operation look like a glamorous vacation, while others had been responsible for overseeing the actual collection of the drugs. A tearful Roberge was sentenced to 8 years in prison during a hearing in New South Wales District Court in 2018. Her counterpart received a 7.5-year sentence of her own. In May of 2021, having served her minimum sentence, Roberge was released from Australian prison, at which point she was deported back to Canada. She co-authored a book about her experience, while Lagasse reportedly signed an agreement with a Canadian production company to make a documentary about her personal story, aiming to dissuade others from getting involved in drug trafficking. Number 3. Joanna Denny. Over a 10-day period in March of 2013, 3 men were found dead from apparent stab wounds, with each of their bodies having been dumped in ditches outside the city of Peterborough, in Cambridgeshire, England. The first victim was Lucas Slabaszewski, a Polish national. The next 2 were property developer Kevin Lee and John Chapman, both of whom were killed on March the 29th. Lee was found the following day, his body having been dressed in a black sequined dress and posed suggestively in a ditch near Newborough. Shortly after the killings, a pair of male dog walkers were stabbed in the street in the cathedral city of Hereford, but both of them ultimately survived. Investigators eventually identified the perpetrator of each of the stabbings as Cambridgeshire woman Joanna Denny, who'd been aided in her killing spree by 2 men, Gary Stretch and Leslie Layton. The woman allegedly sought to kill 9 men in total, expressing a desire for her and Stretch to be like Bonnie and Clyde. Denny was accused of carrying out the murders for the sake of entertainment, at one point telling her accomplice, "I want my fun. I need you to get me my fun." In November of 2013, she pleaded guilty to each of the 3 killings, as well as the 2 additional attempted murders. Following a psychiatric evaluation, she was diagnosed with psychopathic, antisocial, and borderline personality disorders. In court, it was described how Denny had cast a spell over her male accomplices and manipulated them into doing things she wanted. The men were nevertheless punished for their actions. Stretch was found guilty of attempted murder and sentenced to a minimum of 19 years in prison, while Layton was jailed for 14 years after being convicted of perverting the course of justice. In February of 2014, Denny received a life sentence, with the presiding Old Bailey judge recommended that she never be released. Number 2. Mia Khalifa. During an appearance on the BBC show Hard Talk in September of 2019, social media influencer Mia Khalifa opened up about how she'd been manipulated into working in the adult film industry for 3 months. Back in 2014, she'd allegedly been approached on the street by people who told her she'd be well suited for nude modeling. Khalifa was subsequently given a tour of an adult film production studio before being convinced to sign a contract with jargon she didn't understand. The Lebanon-born celebrity began using her prominent social media presence to post fashion and travel content after her brief stint in adult films came to an end in 2015. She recounted being intimidated and scared by production executives who coerced her into continuing to perform despite her expressed desire to stop. Khalifa indicated that her adult film career had caused her family to disown her, which left her feeling alienated and alone. Number 1. Dion Timms Williams. In the early morning hours of July the 20th of 2021, consultant psychiatrist and father of two Gary Jenkins was cruelly beaten and tortured in a city park in Cardiff, Wales. The incident, which ultimately proved fatal for Jenkins 16 days later, was described as a prolonged homophobic attack carried out by a trio of assailants, 2 male and 1 female. The police subsequently arrested Dion Timms Williams, who was 16 at the time, on suspicion of being involved in the assault. Shortly thereafter, investigators reached out to Timms Williams' friend, 18-year-old Lewis Newman, for an interview. Newman claimed that the accused teenager had been staying with him on the night of the attack. Detectives gathered from other witnesses that Timms Williams had spoken about being with a pair of homeless men on the night in question and admitted to getting in a fight in Butte Park, where Jenkins was accosted. Newman was consequently taken into custody on a charge of perverting the course of justice after the police determined his testimony to have been false. In court, the young man was described as naive and having been in awe of Timms Williams, who used his feelings for her to manipulate him into helping her cover up the crime. Timms Williams and the 2 men accused of taking part in the attack with her were each sentenced to life in prison. For his role in the subsequent cover-up, Newman was sentenced to 6 months in a young offenders institution, suspended for 12 months. He was also ordered to perform 150 hours of unpaid work and pay a victim surcharge. Thanks for watching. Would you rather hire a babysitter off Craigslist or only eat at the lowest rated restaurant in your city for a month? Let us know in the comments section below.